Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing. Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of science fiction, your master of fun and wonder, and your chancellor of cheerfulness, and there's a couple others that I'm going to incorporate soon. But any number of names you want to call me, of course, the existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer, Burnett. And once again, it's time for another episode of Robservations, the show about something I'm, of course, robcasting at you from this, the Robservatory. Ha ha ha. It is pouring down rain here in Los Angeles. It's supposed to be pouring down rain for like the next 5 days. It's kind of nice to be in here. It keeps things cool, keeps things going. And as we're watching, Hollywood is sort of, it's like watching a catastrophic failure happening across a computer system in a movie. I feel like the entire ship's systems are catastrophic failure happening right before our eyes, but ultimately for a good reason. However, it's going to make entertainment news very, I don't know, what am I going to talk about? I'll have to, just pull things out from off the shelves and start talking about them soon. But anyway, this is, of course, Robservations episode number 359. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make an announcement. The NBA is gone. They moved Fast 9 off its May date to April 2021. John Krasinski just tweeted out this morning that A Quiet Place 2 is being postponed indefinitely. WonderCon has been postponed, which I always speak at. We always do Starship Smackdown there. It is gone, taken off the table. Public gatherings are taken off the table of all kinds, which, by the way, is all good. It's all for the good of everyone. And I can't say that I think this is anything. It's not a bad thing. I'm very surprised at how quickly this reaction has taken place. It's not disheartening in the least. It's nice to see people come together and do what they're doing. So, yes. And in the spirit of that, I have decided, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but starting tomorrow night, Friday night at 8 p.m., and every 8 p.m. until further notice, 7 days a week, I'm going to be doing another hour-long show at 8 o'clock at night, and it will be me and Elizabeth. And I am going to show Elizabeth a movie that I'm not going to tell her what it is. I will not explain to her what it is or why I am showing it to her. It's going to be a movie that she hasn't seen. It's going to be from all of Hollywood history, all of world cinema history. And at 8 o'clock every night, we're going to crack a bottle of wine, less than $15, a $15 or less bottle of wine. We're going to enjoy that bottle of wine together, and we are going to discuss the movie that I have given her to watch. And so I'll probably set it up, give you a little historical overview of the film, why I chose it. Then I'm going to ask her questions about the film. And I figure, if we don't have movies to watch, we don't have new movies to watch, well then, why not discuss some old movies? Maybe movies you haven't seen. Now, these are going to be comedies. These are going to be dramas. These are going to be foreign films. These are going to be horror films. You're never going to know. Maybe Rob's box of, how can I make the word chocolate into using the word Rob? I don't know what I'm going to call this. I don't know, but it's going to start tomorrow at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I welcome you to join me and Elizabeth for a bottle of wine and a movie. We're just going to talk about one movie the entire time for an hour. And I figured it'd be kind of a fun thing. I started out, people who watch the show, one of the things when I first started this channel, I was going through my movie collection. I was going through the alphabet and just pulling 10 movie titles that I thought were interesting or sort of unique that I had in my collection. And I was talking about all 10 of those titles. And I stopped at F. I never even got to G. And people have been like, hey, Rob, are you gonna do that again? I've never picked up the slack. I've never continued on. So I figure now it'll be just a fun thing to do, and it'll be evergreen, so it's even less topical than this show, and people can, hopefully they'll be up and be able to continue to watch. I thought that would be kind of a fun thing to do. So tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Daylight Savings Time. Now, of course, Elizabeth and I will bring you wine and a movie, or whatever it's called. So look out for that show. I'm hoping to have it completed. Oh boy, now I guess we're going to have to just get to it, aren't we? As everyone knows, the 8th episode of Picard dropped. Now, I've said that I am not going to necessarily review the shows, but I'm going to talk about the shows. And I think first and foremost, I as I've said before, obviously for those of you who even have whether you're watching Picard or not, you have a cursory understanding, if you've seen the trailers, that they have a problem with synths, synthetic life forms. Now, here's my problem. This is one of my overarching problems with the Picard series that also, by the way, spills over into other franchises, not just Star Trek. But I have a question. So, in this week's episode, which, by the way, the opening scene of this week's episode is a flashback where we find out about the Zhat-Vash, the secret female Romulan cabal of women that want to destroy all synthetic life. And now I've wondered, what does all this mean? They finally got into it. And I thought what was really interesting, here's what I thought. I'm going to give it up. I'm going to give it up for Star Trek Picard. And I'm going to talk about things about the episode that I actually liked. Okay? So here's something that, of course, there is there was an idea of an ancient race that remained unnamed. We don't really know who this ancient race was, but this ancient race had the technology to move stars, and what they did was they moved 8 stars into place and basically created a star system, I guess a solar system, I don't know what an octasystem of 8 stars. And in the middle of these 8 stars, they put this planet, which I actually thought was a cool idea. Now I was thinking to myself, where in Star Trek history had I remembered vaguely hearing about there was a race introduced in Star Trek that could move stars. And I was like, after a cursory glance, I knew that I recognized it, but I couldn't recall it. The race that could move stars was actually introduced in a first season Next Generation episode called The Last Outpost. It was also the first episode that we ever saw the Ferengi in. And there was a long extinct race called the Takan Empire that was introduced. And they had long gone extinct, and we had one of their doorways, one of their gateways, but it was mentioned that they could move stars. Now, obviously, the writers of Picard probably don't know this. They just said they could move stars. They didn't mention the Takan Empire, although I think it would have been kind of dope if they did. I mean, they showed us that Quark's bar has apparently been franchised, so why not go in even deeper and mention? But they didn't know. But anyway, so the Takan Empire, let's just call it that. I'm going to give the writers the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say, I'll bet that they were hoping that this civilization, a civilization that could move stars, there is precedent for it in Star Trek history, and from the very first season of Next Gen, which, I mean, if I thought that they were harking back to the first season to show us something that they liked, I would have been like, bravo, writers. But Michael Chabon is the only credited writer on this episode, and I really don't think he knew that. But anyway, let's just assume that he did. So apparently, the reason that the Takan Empire created this 8-star system with a planet in it was they took this whole planet and they basically set up a circular, like this basically a railing, like a circular railing that's electronic, that has been there for however, God knows how many thousands of centuries. It's been there for a long time. And what this was the impossible 8 star system was supposed to draw attention to this planet, and you go onto this planet, and what you do is you put your hands on this thing, and basically it psychically blasts this message from the long dead Takan Empire. It's a warning, and this warning is not to let synthetic life forms exist. And what it does is it blasts something that many people online have pointed out is basically the same message that you saw in the video game Mass Effect, where there was the same message that was blasted into your mind that told you about the evils of AI. Same thing. And if you look, there's already people tweeting out whoever clearly made this montage, whatever effects guy or effects girl, whatever, they're like, oh yeah, it's the Mass Effect montage. So, okay. So that's fine. So basically, whoever finds this out. Now, here's the thing. I was thinking, all right, if synths are so bad, and this was shown as happening 14 years ago. So basically, the Zotvash, who have hated synthetics for apparently thousands of years themselves, or maybe they knew, maybe their sisterhood keeps coming back to this planet, why wouldn't this information be shared with the entire galaxy? Like, it's not like it was only for them to know. Regardless, I mean, okay, I mean, it's a warning where this ancient civilization went and pulled 8 stars to create this 8-star system so people would come and heed this warning. So you would think that if anybody found it, like these Vulcans, or these Romulans, the Zotvash, that they would invite everybody to experience this, because if it was that dangerous, shouldn't the galaxy just know? But anyway, I would have thought that this particular scene, again, it wouldn't be an episode of Star Trek Picard if it didn't open without copious amounts of bloodshed. So most of the group, this group of female Romulans, This Way Lies Madness. Oh, and by the way, it's Commodore O who is leading these Romulans, so she's a Romulan. Or she's Romulan, half Vulcan, whatever she is. Who cares? But she's leading the charge, and they all get this information. And as a result of this information, a lot of them go mad. One of them bashes their head in. One of them takes a Romulan disruptor and shoots herself in the head. So it literally opens with this information being imparted. And you would think that if you were a super sophisticated ancient race that was trying to warn everyone about the dangers of synthetic life destroying everything, you would make your message a little more palatable. Why would you want... I mean, you've taken the time to drag 8 stars and then a planet in the middle of this system, and you've created this warning that is supposed to literally warn the galaxy not to go down a certain path. So why would this information be... I guess it was testing you. You had to be worthy. If you literally didn't pick up a rock and bash your head in. We actually get some great shots, point of view shots of somebody literally hitting their head on a rock. And I have to say, I did laugh out loud at this. I didn't laugh out loud when a woman shot herself in the head, but I just kept thinking, I really wish I had 6 or 7-year-old children that I could be sharing this Star Trek moment with, because it was truly, truly special. And of course, the Romulan Cersei, Narissa, and of course O, and our Romulan poet or great intellect who was assimilated by the Borg, or like the 3 surviving members, and then O went back and infiltrated Starfleet, and their entire raison d'etre, I guess, is to stop synthetic life from happening. And then later on in the episode, there's one interesting concept that I thought was... So they have this concept that I'll give Michael Chabon credit for this. By the way, Michael Chabon has become my least favorite Star Trek writer in all of Star Trek history, which is sad because, just so I can prove it to you. The Yiddish Policeman's Union. Fantastic book. He also wrote a great nonfiction book called Manhood. I've also got The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay up there. I am a huge fan of Michael Chabon's writing. He is a Nebula winner. He's a Hugo winner. He's won a Pulitzer. He is a terrible, terrible television writer. This entire episode had more exposition in it than Inception did. It literally was basically just people talking and telling each other things. But anyway, so we've got this warning to the galaxy that's so important that it kills most of the people that receive it. Well, this could have been an opener. This episode, this moment 14 years ago, should have opened the whole show. Like, if I was making this show, I would have made that the opening scene. You know, rather than show the synths destroy Mars. But here's a problem that I have in terms of, here's the question I have. Here's what I need to know. I would assume that the writers of this show are calling synthetic life forms that have been anthropomorphized, made to look like human beings. I guess. They haven't exactly defined what it is about synthetic life forms that makes them so dangerous. So, if, as we know from The Measure of a Man, where we had many debates, Picard talked to Guinan about one of the dangers in creating a Data-like race. By the way, we did see a clip of Data in this memory dump, assuming that or insinuating that Data was hundreds of thousands of years old, that was originally created. Maybe Noonien Sung didn't create Data at all, but just discovered him. Maybe that's why, remember, he was found. But we did see Noonien Sung in the episode, fourth season, Next Generation episode, Brothers. So, or did we? I mean, I don't know. But the idea of synthetic life has not really been defined on the show. I'm guessing it's only humanoid robots that, and I think this is a problem, because now they're saying that the thing that I was interested in is they mentioned later on in the episode how when a civilization achieves faster than light travel, that is when they can be contacted. That's when you can have first contact with an alien civilization, when they become a spacefaring race that can travel faster than light. That is a threshold moment where other species in the galaxy that have already achieved faster than light, or the Federation, that's what they've deemed it's okay for first contact. Well, apparently this ancient race, the Destroyer, whatever, when a society has reached a threshold of synthetic life, when they've created synthetic life, some other evil force will show up and cleanse, destroy that race, because they've created synthetic life. Well, I need to know, as an astute viewer and reader of science fiction, how is synthetic life defined? Because all we've seen on this show, in terms of synthetic life, are Sung androids, apparently. They keep talking about positronic whatever, like you can clone. It's so stupid. I mean, none of it makes any sense. But, you know, what does that mean? Synthetic life. We don't know. And does synthetic life have to look like, if I created self-replicating, there's something called a von Neumann machine, which is a self-replicating machine. They've used it a lot in science fiction. There is a theory that there would be von Neumann machines scouring the universe looking for life from other alien life forms. One of my favorite science fiction duologies, Greg Bear's The Forge of God and Anvil of Stars, which I still, as everyone knows, one of the projects most near and dear to my heart. If I could make anything, I would want to make Greg Bear's book, Anvil of Stars, into a 7-season cable series that could be incredible. But you'd use both books. And they've tried to adapt these. I've read like 7 different versions of these scripts. They never get them right. Because they always say, well, you've got to adapt the first book as well. But if you had 7 seasons in a series format, it's a perfect book where you can go back and forth between both books and tell the great story. But Anvil of Stars is the sweet spot. But you got to read both. But Anvil of Stars, it's one of my favorite. If I could make anything, I would make Anvil of Stars into a 7-season show. But anyway, what are synthetic life? What is how do you define that? And I kept thinking about all this idea of synthetic life is obviously, it goes back all the way to Metropolis, Fritz Lang's Metropolis, probably even earlier, but we've seen it Battlestar Galactica. I'm like, so this show has basically turned into, Picard is a riff on all the same themes that modern Galactica brought us. And it seems, because why shouldn't you borrow heavily from everybody else that's come before you? The synths are basically the Cylons, and somebody, when you've created synthetic life, even though I have the same problem, like if the Cylons were toasters, if they were Centurions, but they evolved now to a point where they can actually procreate with a human being, biologically procreate with a human being, they're not synthetic anymore. I mean, I know, however they were made, it doesn't matter. They're living beings that can procreate with humans. But I'm just thinking that this whole idea of synthetic life is so underbaked because we've seen all kinds of synthetic life forms. There's been androids throughout history, the history of Star Trek. We've seen nanotechnology. We've seen exocomps. We've seen all kinds of living life forms that I think are synthetic, or you could call them synthetic. Why? And let's lest we forget. So we know that the Romulans have somehow reprogrammed the synthetics, or they made them look. It's very nebulous where this is all coming from and what's happening. I don't understand it. They have not defined, other than showing us Sung type androids, like Data was cloned or something. And now let's get back to Soji. So apparently, there's a planet of synthetic life forms that, I mean, you'd think with Alison Pill's character, Girardi, if she's part of this and she's been bestowed with this knowledge, why would you kill Bruce Maddox? Because I still don't quite understand. Daj and Soji were created, but we learn now that there was more than just the two of them. So did Maddox create these life forms? Did he not? I mean, none of it makes any sense to me. Maybe it will. There's 2 more episodes. We'll find out the answers to these questions. But as I'm watching this, I don't think they really know. I don't think they've really thought through what synthetic life means, because why would synthetic life, I mean, as in Measure of Man, we know that creating a race, basically they've established, second season of Next Gen, by creating a race of Sung androids, you're creating a slave race. Starfleet already dealt with that idea. They're like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But somebody did, I guess Bruce Maddox did. So somebody, after they already created governmental policy not to do that in Measure of a Man, one of the great episodes of Next Generation, one of the great Picard episodes, one of the great Data episodes, the only Maddox episode. So Measure of a Man looms large over this show. And they haven't yet told us, how did these things get reversed? They just decided to say, okay, here's a slave race of Sung androids. Where do they come from? I guess we'll find out. But now there's also a home planet. Like, did the synths move to a planet? Are they reproducing themselves? And do they know that they're outlawed? Do they know that there's this ancient race that will come after them? Like, all of these, I had many questions as I was watching the first opening scene of this episode. And to me, it speaks to a larger issue. And that issue is, when you're creating great science fiction, or fantasy, or horror, when you look at the great works of science fiction, whether it's Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, whether it's the Foundation trilogy, let's go back to the great literature, any Ringworld, Discworld, any of these multiple, the Frederik Pohl's Gateway, part of a series. The science fiction writers who write this material, which, by the way, anybody who's writing science fiction for television should have a working knowledge of science fiction literature, because all of these concepts have already been dealt with, all of them, in books. And they've been dealt with in books in a very fleshed out, robust way. So all of these questions, if you give a cursory reading to a lot of these books, you would have much more of an understanding of what you're dealing with when you decide to say that synths, I mean, all they've said is synths, like we're supposed to know what that means. And I'm like, there's a million questions that come along with that you need to answer. You need to define what synths are. Maybe we'll get an info dump. By the way, this episode was literally the most Basil exposition episode I've ever seen, I think, of any science fiction TV series. Like I said, more than Inception. All we saw was people talking to each other and having these revelatory moments. And now that Soji's been activated, whatever we don't know, she can just come in and fill in the blanks because she knows. Like, why doesn't somebody sit her down a la Lost and go, okay, Soji, since you know so much, why don't you tell us about your homeworld? What's there? Who's there? Where did you all come from? When did you get there? No one really does that. So I'm watching this and I'm thinking, you know, one of the joys of reading science fiction, fantasy, and horror, especially ongoing series or these kinds of books, is when you know that the author, I'm always about authorship. You know, tell us, the reason we love these fictional worlds is because we believe in them. We want to believe in them, and when our belief is rewarded by authors that really know what they're doing. You know, Harry Potter was not just a success because you had a kid who wants to be a wizard. Harry Potter was a success because J.K. Rowling presented an entire world, a well thought out world with its own terminology, its own way of systems, like the different houses at Hogwarts, all the creating a fictional game and the rules of that game. And there's all kinds of, just like before her, just like Tolkien did, or Stephen R. Donaldson did, or any of the great, Anne McCaffrey with the Dragon Riders of Pern series. I mean, any great writer worth their salt thinks and extrapolates upon their universe, so they're creating rules that we can all buy into and go, wow, that's really interesting. That's why I love this, is because there is a fictional universe, and the details of that fictional universe, when you know it's that well thought out, it just pulls you in. It pulls you in. And that's one of the great joys of reading science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And people, look, when I complain about the show, when I watched the show last night and I was just shaking my head going, wait, what? All this did was, there's a million different questions that have been raised, and I know the writers don't have the answers. I see Michael Chabon respond to his critics, and I'm like, he doesn't know, because they didn't think any of this through. And you know what's really interesting? Story reveals itself when you're creating your backstory, or you're creating your universe, or your details. Story builds out of that. You know, you understand, like, okay, if you're talking about faster than light travel, there are story points that are immediately created once you've figured out how does your faster than light travel work. The first regular episode of Battlestar Galactica was called 33. And the whole episode was based around every 33 minutes they had to jump to get away from the Cylons because of the way faster than light travel worked. So they set up just a detail, and from that detail they extrapolate, and they turn a detail of how their own universe technology works into a story. And because they understood it, and they grapple with those details within the confines of that episode of 33. And that's what makes for exciting drama. In this show, in Picard, they're throwing all of this stuff at us, expecting the viewers just to be like, okay, sure, that's I get that. And I think a lot of viewers just do. They just accept, okay, synths. A lot of viewers, synths are bad. We've seen synths all over the place. And they don't, they breeze by it. And that's one way to watch a show. But this is Star Trek. With encyclopedias and with reference material and with online forums discussing every episode. We got one of my favorite sites on the web, Trek Yards, that delves into exploring the minutia of the Star Trek universe from every detail. But in this show, they're throwing these things out willy-nilly, and it's apparent to me that the writers of this show have not thought through their own plot points, because every one of their plot points, I mean, they create these scenes that they think anyway. So now let's forget the synths idea. Let's jump over to the Borg cube, where we've got more murder and mayhem, where the Romulan Cersei Lannister, who we find out was there and was imbued with this knowledge. She was given the knowledge from, let's say, the Takan Empire. I'm just going to call them the Takan Empire from now on. the Tkon Empire warning about synths. So she has taken it upon herself, using whatever ruthless measures she deems necessary in order to save the universe. So on the Borg cube, which now I have even more questions. Why is this reclamation project happening? Why? Now, we hear some information about where that Borg cube came from, but are they looking for synths? You know, it looked to me to be like they were trying to save the lives of former Borg drones, even though we find out that there's thousands, tens of thousands of Borgs that are being kept in stasis on the Borg cube that they're getting to. But why is this reclamation project happening? Well, I guess we'll never know, because in this episode, 7 of 9, inexplicably, she was a Fenris Ranger, way on the other side of the galaxy, but just shows up on the Borg cube, unannounced, apparently. I don't know how she got on. Picard couldn't get on. He had to have diplomatic credentials in order to be let on the Borg cube. 7 of 9, they just let one of the most famous Borgs in the galaxy on this Borg cube. I don't know why. She literally just, in a Deus Ex Machina moment, she literally just shows up and saves Legolas from being killed. Why they have to search for somebody on a Borg cube when they've got the whole thing 3D mapped and they know where everybody... Anyway. So a bunch more death, a bunch more people are killed, and basically 7 of 9 decides to become, basically the new Borg queen. So she's going to hook herself back up, create her own little mini collective in this cube, and take over. But before any of that happens, the Romulans eject all of the remaining Borg that are in stasis, ejects them from the ship, and 7 of 9 gets to turn the Borg cube on. She's basically the new Borg queen, but then the ship releases her because Annika needs to finish her job, whatever that might be. None of this, the entire Borg, it hasn't made sense to me from the beginning. It makes less sense to me now. All the Borgs are dead. They killed all of the XBs. They just straight up in this episode murdered every one of those poor souls who is now being a reclaimed drone, and then they killed everybody. They ejected them all into space. So we have the opening scene where people shoot themselves in the head, bash their own heads in. Then we have the scene where there's a little bit more of a poor Legolas. Romulan Legolas has spent 3 episodes just fighting his way through the hallways of this Borg cube, and nobody uses the stun setting. Nobody uses the stun setting, because why not when you can just kill people? It's just, I watch this, I'm like, what? Look, man, the Star Trek universe has a stun setting. Phaser sets a stun. I mean, it's from the beginning. But in this, are you just saying the Romulans don't use a stun setting? Why would they not? Why would they not? Information is precious to people. If you kill somebody, you can't get information. Why would you be killing somebody? It's their own reclamation project. Nobody's getting off that cube. Why are they straight up fucking killing people? Like all the time. Why is she killing people? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's so maddening. And I really, honestly, I mean, clearly a 7 of 9 is going to take control of this Borg cube. And I don't know, maybe summon all the Borg. Who knows? David Mack, poor David Mack, who's consulting on Lower Decks. David Mack's one of my favorite Star Trek novelists. And all they do is rip off his work. I mean, it's like, hey, man, what are we going to do? Got to go back to David Mack's books. Let's go mine some ideas. You know, in his Destiny trilogy, 7,000 Borg cubes show up. Why don't we have our climax be like the Borg are going to show up en masse, and whoever these big bad Tkon. It's just so whatever. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know. I watched this show, and as an astute viewer of science fiction and a reader of science fiction, I asked myself, by the way, at this point, Picard's not even a character. He's not even a character in his own show. I mean, he sits down and he has conversations, and he offers, he does offer a speech that's kind of I don't know, it's supposed to elicit some kind of feeling of optimism. He even says the word optimism in this episode, in case you forgot what Star Trek was about. And then, of course, we have a character who in being confronted with Soji, who turns out, I won't get into, well, it's Rios. You find out that, Rios has encountered her before, and it's so traumatic. Rios is such a pussy that he sees her. It reminds him of a traumatic event, so he goes into his cabin and finishes drinks a whole bottle of whiskey, and turns on all of the holograms on the ship because he's so depressed and he can't handle it. I'm like, what is he, Matt Decker? Like, what? Who acts this way? Like, everybody, this ship has Jurati, Rios, Rafi, Picard on it. It's got like 4 people on it now, and holograms. And these 4 people, you can murder someone on this ship, and when someone's looking for you, it's not like the ship is giant. It's a small ship. You have to ask somebody, where did somebody go? I mean, it is wacky. And Rios, I'm so depressed. So, of course, Rafi goes in and finds out that, and I will say this, I got to give this up. We find out that Rios used to serve on a ship called the Ibn Majid. The Ibn Majid. Majid. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting. We did have a Cervantes reference in here. We talked about tilting at windmills. And, of course, you couldn't just say tilting at windmills. You had to then, this time we're fighting real. In case you didn't get the literary allusion, Picard had to spell it out for you in case, those people don't know what tilting at windmills means. Let's tell you, we're fighting real giants. I mean, it's just, okay, bruh. It's fine. Okay. But I will say this was kind of cool. Ibn Majid was something else. I was like, oh, I recognize that. Why would they name a starship Ibn Majid? Okay. I'll tell you. Ibn Majid was an Arabian navigator, and he was a cartographer born in the 1430s in what is now the United Arab Emirates. That's pretty cool. That's how you would name. I thought that was neat. Because, Michael Chabon is a learned man of letters. So whenever he's going to name something, I'll give it up for him. That was pretty cool. According to Ibn Majid, wrote several books on marine science and the movements of ships, which helped people of the Persian Gulf to reach the coasts of India, East Africa, and other destinations. Among his many books on oceanography, the Book of the Benefits and Principles and Foundations of Seamanship is considered one of his best. He also wrote a book of lessons on the foundation of the sea and navigation in Arabic. It's an encyclopedia describing the history and basic principles of navigation, lunar mansions, rum lines, the difference between coastal and open sea sailing, the locations of ports from East Africa to Indonesia, star positions, accounts of the monsoon and other seasonal winds, typhoons, and other topics for professional navigators. He drew from his own experience and that of his father, also a famous navigator, and the lore of generations of Indian Ocean sailors. He grew very famous and was fondly called the Shooting Star for his fearlessness, strength, and experience as a sailor who excelled in the art of navigation. So I give it up. He was born in the 1430s in what is now the United Arab Emirates. And I thought that was even a sly dig because I don't know the exact dates, but I believe it was in the 1400s where the imams really took power and Islam was forever changed, and it became obviously more fundamentalist and obviously more legalistic, and they never had a reformation after that. But as we know, that Arab culture up to the 1400s was one of the most vibrant, most scientifically advanced cultures in the world. And what happened was when the imams took over and religion and it became the Quran and Sharia and all that, it sort of, unfortunately, I would, as somebody who's a fan of science, it sort of unfortunately changed their culture. But it was pretty neat that Michael Chabon chose to call a starship the Ibn Majid. I really like that a lot. Of course, finding out all of this, that Rios had apparently come across a Soji clone or whatever she is, and it was a dupe, and it turned into a Starfleet mission to kill them. So Starfleet knew. I've watched the episode twice. I still don't know exactly what's happening here. Maybe the last 2 episodes will find out. I don't know if any of the writers do. Famously, they had to rejigger episode 7 to sort of the story didn't work, and I don't think the story works now. But basically, at the end of the episode, are the Borg going to fight the Synths, and then are we going to see this race come and show up? Why is it that Synths are so dangerous? We understand why they're dangerous in Battlestar Galactica, and you know what? The danger was planted, the seeds were planted by Guinan telling Picard in Measure of Man, if you're going to create a slave race, they're probably going to revolt, because who wants to be a slave? This was dealt with in the 2nd season of Star Trek, of Measure of Man. And I just don't quite understand why we are dealing with this now. And it's maddening. It's maddening. I want to watch a show where I'm sucked in because it's so cleverly written, and I keep harking back to Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or something where the mythology of their universe, and every show has its own universe, believe it or not, is so well thought out. And I feel with this show, it's the concepts it's presenting are so willy-nilly, and they're so undercooked, and they're throwing a million things. Like, all of a sudden, Soji was Data's daughter. Are we going to find out Data is immortal? Is lore behind all of this because lore has really been around? I mean, who knows? Does it really matter? And are they going to make the great peace between synths and humans? Because we haven't, other than synths having an uprising, we still don't really know. We don't even know how synths, other than being used as labor on the Utopia Planitia shipyards, how are synths used? Like Data? Were there synths that were Starfleet officers? Data was a Starfleet officer. If you created a bunch of Sung androids, could they not enter Starfleet? They were already given their sovereign rights in the Federation. I have questions. People. And so do you. And I'm going to jump into them. I'm so glad that I'm only going to have 2 more episodes of this, because really, I feel like the Jad Vash at the beginning of this episode, the more I take in of these images, the more I take in of this show, like one of those poor Romulan women, it makes me want to put a gun to my head and blow my brains out the more imagery from the show I take in. But I again, also, why only women? Why are the Jat Vash and why are the Dora Milaje, the Romulan Dora Milaje, why are they all women? And where's the Romulan government in all of this? Like, why wouldn't the Romulans, if they know that synths are being used, why wouldn't they go to the Federation or the Klingons or anybody? And by the way, where are the Klingons in this show? Where are they? Why would the Jat Vash only take this information for themselves? If a race, and why has no one ever gone to this 8? How did they get there in the first place? If it's 8 stars surrounding one planet, I would think that would be one of the greatest scientific anomalies of in our galaxy. How come people don't go there all the time? Why isn't it a tourist destination? How did they find it and nobody else did? I don't know. This whole thing drives me crazy. Anyway, a lot of people sent in tips. Oh, I forgot to. You know what? I forgot to set up my. My window where you can see it. I hope you'll bear with me. Willow sent in a tip. Hello, Willow. I really appreciate that. Which movie delays, she says, No Time to Die, Fast 9, Quiet Place 2, etc., have you been most disappointed by? My friends were looking forward to Mulan and Black Widow, but it looks like I'll be watching the movies alone now if they'll actually get released on time. I have to say, as much as I wanted to see Justice for Han, it was No Time to Die. As a lifelong Bond fan, but there is an upside. I'll probably be able to save enough money and not be able to clear my schedule and just tell people in advance and be like, hey, man, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I didn't plan it as much as I talked about it for a year, but I didn't plan it. And you know what? Let's face it. I'm going to blame this on Jim Boyers, our moderator, because you just know Jim, who's going to be coming with me, doesn't have his passport. So, Jim, are you here? I don't know if he's in the chat, but let me tell you, I bet he doesn't have his passport, and he's got to go. Because he's never been to Europe. So, Jim, maybe you're not there. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So I would say, but I think what's really interesting, I I think that opens up an opportunity for me on a number of different levels. One, there's not going to be a lot of information coming out about Hollywood, so I'm still going to be here. I'm not going anywhere, but it'll give me time now because I don't have to ever leave the house. I'm going to sequester myself like everyone else because that's a pretty good plan. And I'll be able to really do things I wanted to do here, like finish up this wall of Hot Toys figures, really get the Robservatory in the kind of shape I wanted to get it into, and be able to have guests in and really be able to step up this show. So I think in the long run, I'm going to use the opportunity the next couple of weeks to sort of up my YouTube game, as it were. But I think it's very smart. All of this is very, very smart. I would imagine the Los Angeles School District will be closing shortly, and I think it's all good. And in the long run, you know, obviously the loss of life is tragic and horrible, but in the long run, this is a trial run. The world is responding in a way that I have to say is actually kind of, it's both illuminating and in a way enlightening, and it certainly isn't disheartening because we're watching people do what they need to do. And I think to myself, well, hey, if we can do this for the coronavirus on a worldwide level, and the economy of the world is getting hammered, at least on paper. I can't even the amount of money that's been lost on the stock market alone in the last week, and people say it'll bounce back, and indeed it will, but this is a real test for, I think, the world, and it's been really interesting to see how the world has responded, for the most part, quickly, effectively, and it's unfortunate that our own government, that the Trump administration, I mean, all the way back to 2018, made certain cuts, like with our first responders in terms of dealing with pandemics, were eliminated. And that's something that obviously will never happen again, and we're learning things from this experience. And I think that what has happened here is going to be puzzled over and looked at for a long time to come. But in terms of entertainment, I can still come beaming to you right from here, right from the Robservatory, whenever I want. And that's why I think I'm going to do a nighttime show. I think it'd be kind of fun. People have been asking me to sort of branch out, and I think it's a way to involve Elizabeth. She's a lot of fun, so it'll be fun to have her here and be able to have questions and do this. And these shows will be live just like they are now, and you can question her. But it should be a lot of fun. A spectator sent in a super chat and said, John, hearing you probably meant to say Rob. Hearing you read letters in your sultry, smooth reading voice lowers my anxiety and lulls me off to sleep for my graveyard shift. I love your channel. Thank you. Well, a spectator. Oh, you do say I mean Rob. John reads like a robot. No emotion. Well, I appreciate that, a spectator. I really do. I'm glad that, I always feel like I should put more acting into the reading I do. Like how much should I do it? Should I do characters? I mean, whenever Victory Unlimited show sends me something, just because I feel that they're like, every time Victory Unlimited show sends me in something, I feel I'm at a 40s, I'm in a movie theater, and a serial, like, news on the march shows up. That's why I get to say Victory Unlimited show. I love doing that. I mean, I do more voices, but I'm not a great actor. But I appreciate that you like how I read the letters. Stubble McShave says, one of the most captivating half hours spent was watching Stuckman's review of Veronica. Dude, it must be one of the worst movies ever made. He needed hard liquor to get through the review. By the way, I saw that you appreciated my combining of Star Trek titles on Twitter. Stubble McShave, first of all, I got to give it up for you guys, you imagination connoisseurs, because I've often said that this show has the best. I mean, my viewership it's growing, obviously, and people are saying, you deserve more subscribers. No, you get the subscribers that you work for. People just shouldn't subscribe to your channel. They should subscribe to your channel if they like what you're doing, and if you're giving something, you're providing entertainment value. But I'm gonna throw it right back at you, right back at the audience, right back at you imagination connoisseurs, because I swear to God, this right now, I have the best audience on YouTube. Everybody is creative and funny, and it's you guys are great. But yes, I did appreciate Stubble's I feel bad. I feel bad, Stubble, that I shouldn't be. I feel guilty, to be honest. I mean, I feel guilty that I am constantly sort of ripping on. I don't like to rip on Star Trek. Star Trek's like my favorite thing. It's been my favorite thing for a very, 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 very long time, and I don't like not liking Star Trek. You know, it does bother me. I mean, it really does. I like Star Trek so much, and I feel guilty, and it makes me angry. And people are like, it's very funny, because when I say I don't like this show, I actually said, I questioned myself, why do I watch? Why do I do this to myself? I tweeted that, and as many people will tell you that follow me on Twitter, people attack me. They come at me personally when I express my opinions, and they're like, don't watch a show, you're a child, you're a gatekeeper. I was called a gatekeeper today by saying, why do I do this to myself? And somebody called me a gatekeeper. And I was like, really? I don't, how am I a gatekeeper? By expressing my own opinion about myself. But anyway, yes. But Stubble, why don't you tell, or put it in the chat, tell everybody what you said. I don't want to steal your thunder. Man, but I actually even tagged Nerdrotic and Doomcock, because I thought they're always Gary Beekler, during his review of last night's Picard episode, was trying to come up with a new term for what he was going to call the Star Trek franchise. And Stubble McShave, I thought, came up with the best term. But I don't want to steal his thunder. So I won't. Dirty Nerdy sent in a super chat and says, I really didn't understand the comedy scenes with all the Rios holograms. Very strange whilst going back and forth in a serious situation on the cube. Dirty Nerdy, I'm right there with you. You and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. They literally had a farcical comedic scene with all of the Rios androids the Rios holograms, when they all don't know what they're trying to figure out, what Rios knows and what he doesn't know, and what's really going on. And the holograms, I mean, first of all, why does anybody need to have human beings man starships anymore? I mean, why? Why are they not just crewed by holograms? And are holograms considered synthetic life forms? I mean, it doesn't make any... I have no idea. But yes, with all of this going on, they literally stopped for kind of a slapstick, humorous moment between all of the Rios holograms. In the middle of what presumably is supposed to be, look, murder, death. People are dying. Yesterday's body count had to have been in the tens of thousands. They literally ejected all of these poor Borg drones into space. They didn't even have like 7 of 9 as she's plugged into this Borg cube and she's becoming the new Borg queen, and she's at least for this one cube, she's taking over. She couldn't save them. They literally killed all the XBs first, and then they murdered and ejected all of the Borg drones. The Borg drones they hadn't gotten to reclaiming. What was the point of the Borg cube? Why are they on it? Is it really just a plot point? They had to figure out 7 of 9 just how she was going to come back, and they were going to have her take over the Borg cube. And I guess now she's into the collective again. The collective knows where the cube is. It's turned on. It's just, I know some people like all this stuff, and that's fine. I want you to like it. It's good to like things. I don't. I really, it's getting to the point where I'm going to use not a spoon anymore, but maybe a butter knife to take out my eyeballs, or just jam it into my face. I don't know. Automata sent in a very nice super chat. Thank you, Automata. Major Grin did a video juxtaposing the vigilant speech at the end of Drumhead with scenes from Picard. I've found once you see that, it stays in your mind for Picard details and hurts the soul. The state of the Federation. Oh my God, the Federation is straight up. It's now a puppet of the Romulan government, where we still don't know. It's not even it's the Zhat Vash has infiltrated, like the Mother Mayhem. I'm reminded of like Brother Blood's team from the new Teen Titans. It's like the Zhat Vash. Why have they taken it upon themselves to save the galaxy from synths? Why wouldn't they They've got a whole government at their disposal. Why? I'm like, I don't get it. And they've known this for how many thousands of years? But I guess they didn't know it. I mean, O knew it. But then they go to this planet that should be a huge destination spot in the galaxy, but apparently it's not, because these aliens put these 8 planets, or pardon me, 8 stars around a planet to get people to come, and only the Zhat Vashes come there? These women? Like, what? Why? Why has no one else gone there? And how do they know to go there? And like, once you go to the planet, how do you find the one spot where there's this energy railing, this little energy fence that you put your hands on and you get the information that drives you crazy to the point? Why would it drive you crazy? Just seeing the destruction synths wrought? I mean, I watched 9/11 happen. I've watched all these videos of my life of watching nuclear bombs being tested. Why does this knowledge drive you crazy? I mean, I understand it goes back to Greek myth and all that, but I mean, I would think that this knowledge is supposed to stop everybody. Wouldn't it be knowledge that should be easy to get? Because, hey, don't create synthetic life forms. But has anybody created synthetic life forms? Like, did Bruce Maddox create synthetic life forms? Do we know? There's now a synthetic life form homeworld? What? I guess we're going to find out next week. I don't know. But Otto, I want to thank you for that lovely super chat. That was very nice. Richard tips and sends, get it, you didn't enjoy it, but isn't there another hierarchy here? So, for example, if you're going to follow the craven woke nihilist path, I personally think you should make your stuff enjoyable. I enjoyed this episode personally. It wasn't boring. Compare that to Doctor Who. Not only did it follow the craven woke nihilist path, but it was boring. I wasn't expecting much from Star Trek Picard after the first episode, but I've kind of been enjoying it for what it was. Okay, well, I would give that to you. It's certainly not boring. Although I would much rather see a story that shows us all of these things. Like, they keep going back. We heard about something in Rios's past. Like, if you look at the way Breaking Bad is told, for instance, you jump in and out of time in episodes of that show that give us backstory for characters so we learn who they are. Like, we're introduced to Rios. Why not then show us his captain? And why not show us him and this mission where they find a Soji? Why are we being whatever her name was, Flower Boy, or what? They literally have a character named Beautiful Flower. I mean, these are things we should be seeing. That's why we watch television. That's why we watch movies, to see this stuff. That's why this episode was so unbelievably horribly written. It was a horribly written episode of television, because it's literally people standing around. If I had written this script and I tried to pitch this script or sell this script as a movie or something, people would have laughed at me. They would, like, show us all of this stuff. I mean, if I were to see this stuff, it might be more interesting. But hearing it after the fact, where this dashing character is literally, he's retreated into his cabin. I mean, he's a captain of the ship, and he's former Starfleet, and he's so depressed that oh, by the way, lest we forget, I forgot, Rios' old captain, because he was so racked with guilt, and Starfleet said, if you don't do this, kill these synths or whatever, we're gonna blow you up. He killed himself. He put a gun in his mouth, he put a phaser in his mouth and killed himself. I mean, why aren't we seeing this stuff? This is vital information. Anyway, but I look, I think a lot of people are enjoying the show. I do. I think a lot of people are enjoying this, true. But in terms of being woke, I would say that ultimately, the way they're portraying women on this show, women are the women on this show are especially the Romulan females they have a lot to atone for. They just straight up, you'd think if your entire job is to save the universe from synths, how they're doing that is by murdering all the people that they're supposed to be saving from the synths. I just don't understand I don't get it. I really don't. Tony Rodriguez says, hey, Rob, great show. You met me and my girl at the Brooklyn Schmodown on the corner. When you arrived, I remember. And you was talking to that weird tall dude. That's Christopher. He does a lot of Talkbacks. Schmodown Talkbacks. He's a good dude. Laugh out loud. My question is, that was the first time I met him, by the way, Christopher. Laugh out loud. My question is, why are there so many 5 per show commercials on your non-live video? Do you put them in? Good question. Yes, there are commercials that are they were put in, but they get put in by YouTube. I go in and take them out. Usually there's like 3 or 4. If for a 2-hour show, I try and do one like every there's like 4 in the show. Yeah. That's so I actually go in and take them out and put it that way. But yes, so I do that. Otherwise YouTube kind of does it for me, and it's kind of they'll put in like 20. But it was great to meet you guys. That was a lot of fun. You know, I took the subway there, which was pretty cool. There's a subway stop just up the street, and I walked down that. I like that area. That was cool. Matt Tween sent in a $5 super chat and says, normally we park our shuttlecraft in the same bay, but until this COVID-19 thing blows over, all remain sealed inside my own Dyson sphere. Well, me too. I'm going to be working on the Robservations and not going anywhere, I don't think. But I think it's okay because I have a lot of stuff I have to finish. And I have to finish, as everybody knows, the Hills Run Red. I'm now back to collaborating with Dave Parker, the director of Hills Run Red. We are both making our stuff. I actually looked at, he did a beautiful piece, if I do say so myself. He did a beautiful piece, an interview with our composer, Freddie Weidman. And on Hills Run Red, one of the great things about Hills Run Red was working with Freddie Weidman, who he's done a lot of music for a lot of the DC animated films. He's a really talented composer, and Hills Run Red was, I think, only his second score, and he knocked it out of the park. And Dave did a great 20-minute piece on him, and it's a really cool piece. If you like film music, one of the things about the Hills Run Red is the movie itself's like 84 minutes, but the DVD or the Blu-ray, our Blu-ray is going to have at least 3 hours of special features on it. And they're very substantial. They're very interesting. And even if you don't like, here's my thing. I mean, Hills Run Red is what it is. I'm very proud of it. I was producing a movie that I was going to be making for $350,000. We flipped it to a studio, and we got to make it with Joel Silver, which was, for me as a producer, an epic win. And normally on something like this, I thought we would get bought out and they'd go make it. But no, they retained Dave as the director, and they retained me as the producer. We went to Bulgaria and made this movie. But I think what's really interesting is whether you love the movie or not, we've tried to create a behind-the-scenes package that gives you a really well-rounded look at how a movie is made. And I think for it's worth buying for the 3 hours of special features alone, because Dave and I work with Dave creating all the special features I was producing. He worked on X-Men. He worked on Usual Suspects with me, Superman Returns, Chronicles of Narnia. He worked on a lot of these movies, and Dave is a director himself. So it's been great sort of collaborating. I thought we weren't going to be able to collaborate, but we're collaborating now, and it'll be a great package. So it's been fun. Now I have a reason I can just stay home and make the special features as good as they can be. I'll just be here broadcasting at you, broadcasting with Elizabeth, and it should be fun. Richard sends in another tip. Couldn't Seven have explained that she got on the Borg cube because she was Borg? Cheap, but good fan service. Yeah, you'd think, man. You'd think that if there's like a Borg cube, she is Borg. They didn't even say it. She just shows up. This is why this is another reason why I hate this show. Just by having Seven show up, not just show up in the cube, but show up to save Legolas, Space Legolas, to save him at the moment he needed to be saved. Like, how did she know where to do that? And if she knew where to go, well, and they keep sending people to fight with him, why don't they just stun him? I mean, you see a bunch of dudes across the room from him, and they've all got weapons or whatever. Stun him. Just stun him. He's carrying a sword. You have beam weapons. And then Seven of Nine shows up. My question is, last time we saw Seven of Nine, she was back on that planet. She was on Free Cloud, killing her ex-lover or her whatever she is. And that was the last we saw of her, and now she's just on the Borg cube? I mean, the first question, here's, as an astute viewer, ladies and gentlemen, the first question that came to my mind is, how did she get there? How did she know Space Legolas was on the Borg cube? Why would she care? Like all of these things. And I'm like, I hate watching TV where if somebody shows up on a show, it literally talk about Deus Ex Machina. You can't just do that. And because then I'm sitting there going, well, how did that happen? The last time we saw one of our characters want to get on the Borg cube, Rafi had to lie, had to call Starfleet Command, had to drum up some ridiculous reason, and finally say Picard needs to get on this Borg cube. I mean, there were protocols set up. We saw them. We saw those protocols. And now when Seven of Nine just shows up, I go, hey, wait a minute. You've already shown me how to get on this Borg cube. How did she do it? But I guess they're just expecting we're all dumb. And we don't ask these questions. I can't help it. You've shown me, you've set up a rule. Here's what science fiction, fantasy, and horror that's really good does. It sets up rules for its universe, and it plays by those rules. And that's what viewers know. Viewers are astute. They're astute. They know. They get it. And so when you violate the rules you've set up in a few episodes previously, you have to ask yourself, why do you think that I am stupid? Why am I stupid? And why has Space Legolas been fighting in the same corridors for the last 3 episodes? Has no one come down with a beam weapon? I mean, you've seen Picard from a time perspective. Picard went to Riker's planet. I call it Riker's planet now. Riker and Troy's planet, Nepenthe, whatever. Hung out, had pizza. Poor Space Legolas has been fighting since then. Like he's been literally. How many Romulans are on that Borg cube? And poor Space Legolas. I mean, give the guy a bow and arrow at least, for God's sake. Why does he have a sword? I mean, Space Legolas should be like busting heads with his dead shot archery skills. Or how about the Romulans? I mean, they've been fighting, looking for him for now the ship's going through warp. I mean, he's literally been fighting the same Romulans it has to have been days now. Has he had to go to the bathroom? Has Space Legolas, needed a bit of a wee? Because poor guy, has he eaten? Like, he's just been, I don't know, hanging out until, hey, how long did it take 7 of 9 to go, like they're going to Free Cloud, yo. They were on Free Cloud, then they went back to the Borg cube. How long did it take 7 of 9 to go anywhere? Like, come on, man. I mean, 7 of 9 is faster than the dragons in Westeros, man, or faster than the ravens. It's unbelievable. I hate this show, just so you know. Every day I watch this show, I get angry. I get angrier and angrier. I swear to God, I'm going to Hulk out soon. I'm going to Hulk out. I don't even need gamma radiation. I'm just like the questions like in my mind. And I don't understand how they can look at this show. I mean, apparently by episode 7, they're like, oh, we have to do reshoots because none of it made sense. Well, none of it makes sense now after your reshoots. I mean, the Takan Empire, they just didn't really have when they dragged 8 stars to create that system. They sure didn't think it through. Like, we should really, since we've made the biggest beacon in the Milky Way galaxy to get people to come, maybe we shouldn't have made our message so difficult to sort of to accept. I don't know, man. I don't know. Apple Crow sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, did you ever watch a show called Counterpart? I did. That was a great show, and I'm sorry it ended too soon. It suddenly became relevant again as part of the show deals with a post-pandemic world. That's on top of it being one of my top sci-fi shows of the last couple of years, both in writing and acting. Counterpart was really cool. J.K. Simmons was in that show. If you guys haven't seen it, it was a lot more compelling science fiction than Star Trek Picard. But you know what? BJ and the Bear was more compelling science fiction than Star Trek Picard. And I hate that I say that. I mean, I don't even know. Does Picard even know why he's doing this? Like, they've got Soji. He rescued Soji, but now does he understand? Like, he doesn't know. Like, why doesn't he go home? Like, why doesn't he turn over Soji to Starfleet? Like, I don't understand. He rescued her. Now he's going to see it through. Why is he seeing it through? because he's optimistic and he's going to save the galaxy. Like, he's got holograms now. Just let the holograms handle it. I mean, the holograms with their wacky Irish accents. And I mean, we literally watched a hologram. By the way, a hologram almost falls asleep in this episode. I kid you not. A hologram almost falls asleep because, man, the wacky if they're going to do a Star Trek spin-off show, and you know this is coming. You know this is coming. I know it's been reported as a spoiler. Maybe, I mean, when are we going to find out? At some point, the real Rios, maybe he died or maybe he's going to die. You know that at some point the shocking twist is going to be that Rios has been a hologram the whole time or some stupid shit like that. Because why? Because why not? Why should Girardi not know? Holograms have force fields to make sure they're fully functional. I mean, if a hologram can sleep, a hologram must be able to, get busy. Maybe Rios has been a hologram the whole time. Dun, dun, dun. I don't necessarily think I would not put that past the people who are making this show. It's so clever. Rios is a hologram. He has been the whole time. Girardi's like, well, you're more real than half the dudes I've dated in my life. I'm sure we'll get that joke. No, just kidding. Simon Gilmore says, Rob, just curious if the link I sent you worked. I have not clicked on it yet, but I'm sure it does work. I will get to it, I promise. Scarpad's Comic Trek sent in a super chat and said, I watched because I love Trek, but I won't rewatch. I know, that's the funny thing, Scarpad. I'm more interested with Picard in reading other people's analysis of the episodes than I am in the episodes themselves, which I think is a super bummer. I've never felt that way. Like I poured. It's not because I've gotten older. I poured over Star Trek episodes. I love Star Trek, and it's I don't know. Jet Screamer says, I'm still pondering the 5 queens in Data's hand in episode 1 of Picard. Have you any thoughts? Well, maybe it signified the Borg queen. I'm hoping that it really signifies that Q shows up in drag. With his mariachi band and his cigars. I mean, Rio smokes cigars. Q can snap in, put cigars right in your mouth. I think Q needs to show up. The final episode, here's what I want. I want Lore to show up. I want Q to show up. The Traveler should show up with Wesley because they've been hanging out for a long time. I basically just want to see basically a Star Trek party to happen and liven this show up. That's what I want to see. But I think the 5 queens. It's got to be Q and drag. No, I'm kidding. I don't really think that, but I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, think about it. We've had murder in every episode. Literally every episode, we've had murder. We've had people getting just straight up murdered. This episode last night, all the Borgs got killed. 7 of 9 became basically the Borg queen in this sector of the galaxy. We've got holograms that are falling asleep. We've got Rios weeping, crying, and drinking whiskey in his ship. This isn't even a merry band of misfits. These are people that, like, can you imagine if in a crisis you're confronted with not even an ex-girlfriend or something. You're confronted with the artificial life form that your former captain eliminated and felt so guilty he killed himself. Because isn't that what people do now? In the Star Trek universe, when something bad happens, you just straight up kill yourself. You don't become obsessive or crazy like Ron Tracy, or you don't try and destroy the doomsday machine. You don't even become proactive. You just take your own life because you're guilty. Like, what? I mean, dudes, come on. For real. Automata sent in a super chat and said 3 words, wide field stun setting. Where is it? Who knows? Like, what's with the disruptor happy Romulans? I mean, Romulans are all about getting information until apparently they don't want information. And Space Legolas, man, I hope somebody's keeping track of how long he's surviving the Hunger Games, because, man, that dude is straight up winning. I mean, that poor guy and his sword doesn't have to pee, doesn't have to eat. Episode after episode after episode, while people are traversing the galaxy, poor Space Legolas is just stuck in this corridor fighting hordes of Romulans. Until they stop coming, until Seven of Nine shows up and, like, takes care of the Romulans in that particular corridor. I guess they don't come back from their shift. And then they get to take over the Borg cube because no other Romulans follow them. There's like, well, hey, what are those 5 Romulans we sent down the corridor? We haven't seen them in a day. Maybe we should send some more Romulans there. And then they don't come back. How many times have groups of Romulans gone down Legolas's corridor and been eliminated by a sword? I mean, it's like, come on, you guys. I want to count it up. Somebody needs to make a YouTube video and explain to me how long Space Legolas was in the corridors of the Borg cube fighting Romulans off. Because, man, that was a long time. Oh, where's Hugh? I don't know, man. He's been dead for, let's see, how many Romulans? He's been dead for 50 Romulans. He died 50 Romulans ago. I mean, it's so weird. It's just bizarre. I don't get it. Keto Lock tips $5 and says, Star Trek Picard, at this point, it's all just laughably ridiculous. Well, it is. They should put a laugh track in the show, and it would be kind of, if they made it a Star Trek sitcom and said it was a send-up of all science fiction shows, I would laugh, because it's certainly not Star Trek. All right? We've got Galactica. We've got Firefly. I don't know how much about The Expanse we've got. We've got Mass Effect, the video game. There's so many things we got our literary illusions. Like we got a little Don Quixote this week. We got a little. We talked about a great Arab explorer who came to prominence and wrote amazing books before the Imams took over and Islam went all a fundamentalist in Sharia for the last 600 years or whatever. We got him, so that was pretty cool. I don't know, man. I don't know. We got Rios' captain straight up killed himself. We got murder. We got Space Legolas fighting in the corridors of the Borg cube because nobody has a stun setting, apparently. You'd think they would go borrow. And by the way, how did Soji get on the Borg cube? Who hired her? Who's her boss? Has she called her mom recently? Her fake mom. I don't know, man. Mattuine says, Space Legolas, help! 7 of 9. I'll be there in a Quibi. Oh, you know what? That should be, make that commercial, please. Please cut that in. Somebody can, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll just, help! I'll be there in a Quibi. Yeah. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't know, man. And look, if you like the show, I more power to you. And I have to say, I'm liking the show more and more, if only because the entertainment value, as long as I stop, there's anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Dr. Kubler-Ross wrote a book, I guess in the 70s, about the stages of death. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. As far as the Star Trek franchise is concerned, since Discovery's debut, I have been mourning the death of Star Trek. Maybe I've been mourning the death of Star Trek since 2009, but really I was giving it a pass because that was the Kelvin verse. So I could, in my mind, I'm like, that's an alternate universe. None of it's real. It didn't really happen. I could discount it. But since Discovery went on the air, it's my Star Trek universe. So I've been accepting the slow death of it. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Maybe I'm finally coming out of my Star Trek funk and I will just accept the way things are. I will just accept the way things are and watch them the way I guess I'm meant to watch them. And I look at this book. The Pulitzer Prize winning author of The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And this book, The Yiddish Policeman's Union. The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay and the Yiddish Policeman's Union. And even this book. This book has, you know what? Michael Chabon, there's a essay in here. I don't know what it's called. Let's see. Founding of Time. I think it's on page 59. It's called The Wilderness of Childhood. And if this is the essay I'm thinking of, it is a great essay that I really connected with about childhood, what my childhood was like, how we were sort of free roaming, we were free range kids before it was called free range. It was just normal. You know, you'd leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. Your mom would say, "Come back before dinner." And this book on manhood for amateurs, it is a wonderful book. Michael Chabon is a wonderful, wonderful writer. He really, really is. And if you read The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay and the Yiddish Policeman's Union and Manhood, he's a wonderful writer. And I really connected with him. And that's why, again, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Part of the stages of death that I'm in is that one of my favorite writers is writing some of the worst Star Trek that I have ever encountered. Of all the writers I've encountered in my travels, his was the most disappointing. The Stages of Grief. Yes, Stubble McShave says, you're right. Pardon me. It is The Stages of Grief. Did I say death? Maybe that's where my mind's at. Yeah, I've been watching so much Picard where Space Legolas has been fighting for his life for so long. I only think about death. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is The Stages of Grief. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It is The Stages of Grief. I meant to say The Stages of Grief. I am sorry. It's not The Stages of Death, but I was thinking about death in terms of grief. My grief over the death of Star Trek. But yes, it is The Stages of Grief. Thank you for correcting me, Stubble. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you know where I first heard that, to be honest? And I had not read the book. I had not gone and read her work. The reason I read that, the first time I heard that, was in, of course, one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Bob Fosse's All That Jazz. In All That Jazz, they talk about that. It's a big part of the character of Davis Newman's character, the comedian that the character is making in the movie, Roy Scheider's character. And he's making a movie where there's a whole monologue, a comedic monologue you see repeated over and over again as he's cutting that comedic monologue about that. And I went and read her book because of that movie, because of that. Dirty Nerdy sent a super chat and said, Picard and crew seem to have forgotten about Elnor. Yes, Space Legolas clearly didn't make much of an impression. Picard did go all the way. He took a detour to go get poor Space Elnor and straight up left him on a Borg cube. Well, I have a more lost cause than yours. Well, when he ever gets back to the ladies, when he ever comes back to the Romulan Dora Milaje and says, "Hey, what's up, man?" They're going to be like, "Where's Elnor?" Oh, God. I left him on that poor cube. Boy, that's going to go down well. You know, you abandon him for 14 years, you come and you take their favorite son, and you leave him on a poor cube. Oh, my colon. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Picard and crew, Dirty Nerdy, they seem to have forgotten. Poor Space Legolas. You know, what are you going to do? What happens when Space Galadriel finds out that Space Legolas was left on the Borg cube? What's she going to say? Poor Picard, letting those people down twice. You took their kid and you left him to die in a Borg cube. Like literally, you couldn't have said, you know, like, Elnor, why don't you step through this doorway with me and Soji, like, right now, and you won't have to spend the next 8 weeks fighting off Romulans in this one corridor with no food, no water, and nowhere to go to the bathroom. Yeah, man. I don't know what to say. I feel bad. I feel bad for Space Legolas, and I feel bad now for Space Galadriel, now that I'm thinking about her. Poor Space Galadriel. I mean, her favorite son that they raised since he was a boy. They trained him in the ways of the Space Dora Milaje, and now he's gone forever. Something tells me that Seven of Nine will. And by the way, why would Seven of Nine rescue Space Legolas? You know why? I mean, basically, she basically just turned into Saruman again. You know, she's connected herself to Isengard, the all-seeing eye, the all-seeing eye of Sauron and the Borg. I mean, if the Borg are Sauron and they have this all-seeing eye, the Borg are coming, man. They're coming en masse. Poor Space Legolas. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? What's he going to do when they come for you? Poor Space Legolas. He's been fighting for days. I mean, 7 of 9 doesn't even stop and go, hey, man, do you need to go to the bathroom? Can I get you something to eat? Can we replicate you a piece of pie? Or, like, you must be tired. How long have you been fighting in this corridor? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting a little giddy. Perhaps. I feel like I'm getting a little giddy. I'm feeling really bad. I mean, you could do. It's kind of like. I feel like Space Legolas is in The Raid. The movie, as everyone knows, I love the movie The Raid or The Rad, where it's just fighting. It's awesome. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And I feel like every time we go to a commercial break, or we there are no commercial breaks streaming, but every time we go somewhere else, poor Space Legolas has to keep fighting. Every time we cut back to the La Serena, it's like, poor guy is still fighting. He's still back there fighting the Romulans. Until he gets respite when, you know, the people they sent after him once before, like, it's like they send these guys after him, they get all killed, and they don't come back. Like, he's a security risk. I don't understand. Oh, and by the way, apparently I forgot to I forgot about this. Somebody did die. Apparently one of the big bads in the episode died too. I forgot about that. She got her comeuppance. Some of those reclaimed XBs, man. I forgot about that. So much for her saving the universe from the synths. You didn't even get Space Elrond. Didn't even get his justice, man. He didn't even get one in. You got the XBs coming. I forgot about that. Anyway, it's true, ladies and gentlemen. It's true. Yeah. Again, a character, one of the prime movers, one of the architects of this plan. Apparently, we don't get to see that person do anything very effectual. Why was she a bad person? What's going to happen when, like, her brother finds out? Let's see. Oh. This letter comes from Han the Hun. Hey, Rob, this time just a short suggestion. I know I need to write another letter, and I have some ideas, but short on time. Sorry. Still massively enjoying your content. I found a recent podcast interview by Midnight's Edge with Melinda Snodgrass, and it was absolutely delightful. Melinda seems to be the kind of person that absolutely parks her shuttle in the same bay as yours, from UFO and Star Trek to Star Wars and general sci-fi fantasy, with a very interesting career and lots of insider knowledge. I'm absolutely convinced that your community would be immensely entertained by an interview discussion between you two and absolutely nerding out. Cheers and stay awesome. Han from Bavaria, currently building the Lego International Space Station. Well, Han from Bavaria, you, sir, are correct. So for those of you who don't know, Melinda Snodgrass was a writer-producer on seasons 2 and 3 of Next Generation. She and I became very friendly when we were working on the Next Generation documentaries. Famously, Mike Akuda and Denise Akuda had given her a original editor's copy of The Measure of a Man, which ran 13 minutes too long. So what happened was it was edited down, and the episode had that 13 minutes cut out. So when we started on the Next Generation project, Mike and Denise contacted Melinda when they were restoring the episodes, asking if she still had that videotape of the extended version of Measure of a Man. And she said she did. So the thought was, Mike and Denise Akuda, they said, look, this is a straight up really great, this is the only extended edition of a Star Trek episode that could exist, or that does exist. And we could put this version of the videotape on the disc. And indeed they did. But I said, when I was in New York City, we would interview the cast and crew of Next Gen, And my first interview with Patrick Stewart was at CBS in New York City. So I was at their headquarters with Ken Ross, who pulled the trigger on the entire Next Generation restoration. And we interviewed Patrick Stewart. And I conducted the interview. I interviewed Patrick Stewart. We had multiple sections. We had 2-hour blocks of time. So I would sit down multiple times with each member of the cast over the course of the 3 years that we were doing the Next Generation documentaries. And it was great because I got to sit down with them for a long period of time and talk. So this was my first interview with Patrick Stewart. It went great. You can see that was the interview where he's wearing a suit because he was going to I think he was going to speak at the Peabody Awards at the time. He was wearing a great suit. He was in a suit, and then there's another time when I was interviewing when he was in different clothes. But if you see the interviews with the suit was this day. So after the interview was over, we went up to Ken Ross's office, and we were talking about Measure of a Man. And I said, Ken, this whole project is, and I did this. It's not me taking credit. It was just an idea that I had. I'm like, if we've got an extended version of Measure of a Man that we actually have it came from the editors, and it was this great version, and we're going into the negative anyway, why don't we finish this? Well, it'll be the only extended version of Star Trek that ever is done. And Mike and Denise looked into it. There were 3 effect shots that needed to be completed there were little effect shots that needed to be finished. So they did that, and they did it. They went into, at my behest, my idea, Ken Ross approved it. They went in and they made the extended version of Measure of a Man. Now, and I was also, at the same time, we were doing interviews with Melinda Snodgrass. That's how I met her. So we did, again, a really long interview with her, actually, that you can see on the disc. She was obviously very, very smart. She's best friends with George R.R. Martin. As a matter of fact, what was really cool is at Comic-Con, I think that year. Well, anyway, so what happened was Measure of a Man gets finished in high def, the extended version of Measure of a Man to go on the disc. Well, then they started doing the Fathom events. They did 3 different Fathom events, but until Cliff Bole, the director, two stories. So let me finish the Measure of Man story. So Measure of Man gets finished, and CBS, to promote the release of the HD versions, the remastered versions of Next Gen, decide to have theatrical events through Fathom. And they did, to the point where they even made movie posters, which I have. Well, they did a Fathom event with Q-Who and Measure of Man. So the world premiere of the extended version of Measure of Man, that was my idea to finish it, was in movie theaters, 1,200 movie theaters across the United States. And I went with Melinda and Mike and Denise to see it. We went to Century City to see it in a theater. It was incredibly exciting to be working on this Star Trek project and to go to a movie theater and see these episodes. And if you haven't seen, it's hard to tell now because now everybody's mostly watching the remastered episodes, but to see a Star Trek episode on the big screen, and what was even cooler was I was doing the documentaries that we were doing, included in those Fathom events. I was also cutting and creating all of the blooper reels and the documentary cut down. So my documentaries that I was making, and at this point, I was working with Roger Lay Jr., but I was conducting most of the interviews, and I was doing all the editing and producing of each documentary. So I would do these documentary pieces, and then I would do cut downs of, CBS would give me all the outtakes or any bloopers or whatever. They would send me hours of tapes, and then I'd cut the best 5 or 10 minutes of bloopers that existed. So I got to do all those. I would get to cut those as well, and they were part of the Fathom events as well. So I was watching my own documentary work on the big screen along with Star Trek episodes. And this was the closest, I often say my own contribution to Star Trek was, in terms of I often tell people I've never actually worked on real Star Trek, but that isn't entirely true. So while I suggested doing Measure of a Man, I didn't actually touch it. Like, I had nothing to do with the reconstituting the episode. But when I started on the Next Generation Restoration Project, I knew that there was a David Rappaport, he was a little person. He was the leader of the Time Bandits in the movie Time Bandits. He was cast in the episode The Most Toys, which is one of the later episodes of the third season. And you might ask, but he wasn't in that episode. That's correct. He was not. He shot for one day, and he then tried to take his own life. He shot on a Friday and tried to take his own life on a Saturday. He did not succeed. He succeeded, unfortunately, a couple months later in doing so, which was very sad. But he shot for one day. And then Saul Rubinek was hired as his replacement. So when I started on the Next Generation project, I asked CBS Digital, who are reconstituting the episodes, I said, there is some negative. I wonder if it exists and if you could find it for me. And I was asking them this for months. And the one day, I get a drive. What I asked them to find me was the negative of that day, of the day that David Rappaport had shot his day. No one had ever seen this, to my knowledge. I don't think there's any photographs of him online at this point. And they didn't know. They didn't know what I was talking about. And I didn't really explain it. I go, if you find, it's for this episode, The Most Toys, because they had archived if you find it. A couple months later, I get a drive. Because what they would do is they would scan footage and send it to me as I requested it. So I get this drive. And it was the footage, the raw footage. It had never been touched. It had never been touched. The original editors of the episodes never touched it. It had never been touched. There was no SAG reports or production reports anywhere about this footage. And CBS, when they transferred it, they knew it was something anomalous, but they didn't, they're like, okay, well, you've been asking for it. You're the only person that has been asking for this footage, and nobody knows what it is. And it doesn't appear in any reports, but it's here, so we transferred it for you. So they transferred me the raw footage, and they synced it up with the audio. So I get it, and it's this David Rappaport footage. And so I took it, and I cut it. I cut this original Next Generation footage that no one had ever seen before. And it was David Rappaport in costume, acting mostly with Brent Spiner as Data, as Kivas Fajo. And I cut it. I was the first person to I mean, obviously the people that transferred it saw it, but I was the first person to ever do it. And I there's even stuff that appeared on the view screen, and I made temporary mats and put it all together. And I sent it to CBS. You had to get things approved. And there was a little bit of a freak out. People were like, what the heck? As I am wont to do. What the hell, Rob? What is this? People are like, what is this? What is this footage with this footage that no one has ever seen? And I had to explain what it was. And CBS, the lawyers, we had two lawyers that were dedicated to us that just looked at our footage, and they were not pleased. And so it started, I'm like, look, man, this is part of Star Trek history that who knows that. So what ended up happening was they went to David Rappaport's family, and it was the last thing he ever shot in his life. And they graciously allowed us to use it on the disc. And you can see it. It's on the third season Star Trek Blu-rays. And that had never existed before. So when people said, well, it's funny. People are like, you're blacklisted by CBS. And that was actually, in terms of Star Trek, working on an actual episode. I can actually say I worked on an episode of Next Generation with an asterisk. Asterisk right by my name saying, hey, but it's true. But that was really fun. So there you go. Yeah. I don't know. Where was I? What was I saying about that? Why was I telling you that? Just to toot my own horn, I suppose. Oh, no, I know why. Back to Melinda Snodgrass. Back to Han the Hun's letter. So, yes, I love Melinda Snodgrass. And, yes, Midnight's Edge did a great interview with her. And for those that don't know, if you're a member of the Writers Guild of America and you work on a TV show, and if you create a character and someone else uses that character appears on screen, it can't just be mentioned by name. If that a character appears on screen, is played by an actor, you are owed a character payment because you created the show. That's why, say, for instance, Nick Locarno from the Next Generation episode The First Duty, played by Robert Duncan McNeil, is not was turned into Tom Paris for Voyager. Because if they had kept Nick Locarno as the character, as was obviously originally intended, the creator of that character, the creator of Nick Locarno, would had to have been paid another character payment for every episode of Star Trek Voyager. So what they did was they changed his name, even though his backstory is pretty much the same. So you have to get a character payment. Now, I understand from an economic standpoint, you can't make a series regular a character that someone else created on a different show. But Bruce Maddox, his character was created by Melinda Snodgrass for the episode Measure of a Man. He's also mentioned in the episode Data's Day, because we find out that Data has been corresponding with Bruce Maddox, but no character payment was due because we don't see Maddox. We only hear his name mentioned. Data keeps mentioning his name. But so by creating, they made Bruce Maddox a MacGuffin. And by the way, what a waste that was. What does Bruce Maddox have anything to do? What did they learn from that character other than having Girardi straight up murder him? Why did they go get him? What was the point of that? I mean, seriously, people, if you like Star Trek Picard, tell me, why would you write this character in, this quest to go get Bruce Maddox, only to straight up murder him? But anyway, no one called Melinda Snodgrass. No one told her that the character of Bruce Maddox was going to be, I guess, a MacGuffin in Star Trek Picard. Nor did they tell her, and Brian Brophy, who played Maddox, is the head of the theater department at Caltech. So why didn't they just go get him to play the character again? I guess, I don't know. I have no idea. But so Melinda Snodgrass was, let's just say, miffed. Would miffed be the word? No one told her they were going to use her character, but she is owed a character payment. Now, I looked this up about character payments. Apparently, they have to pay her a few weeks after the last episode of Picard airs. But I think that's it's not like Melinda Snodgrass hasn't been working. She's a very talented writer. She's been working, developing the series, the Wild Cards novels that George R. R. Martin edits into shows. I'm sure Melinda Snodgrass would have loved to come back and maybe take a crack at her character. But anyway, yes. So the Midnight's Edge interview with Melinda Snodgrass is very interesting. Now I've taken a total divergence, as I am wont to do, about all of this. And I apologize. I hope I've taught you something. Let's see. Sean M. sends in a super chat and says, Picard had production problems, right? I wonder what it was like before they fixed them. It would be interesting to talk to people in the know. Well, yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't know anyone who is working on Picard now except Mark Bernardin, who, of course, works with Kevin Smith a lot on his podcast. Mark Bernardin, who's a great guy, terrific entertainment writer, great writer of content, is now one of the supervising producers on Picard. And of all people, even more so than Kirsten Beyer, Bernardin has experience in the industry, so kudos to him. And, I hope that the job doesn't become soul-crushing when other people override his opinion, because Mark told this great story about how one of the first things he wrote, the first screenplays he wrote, was a spec Next Generation script, and he won an award for it. So kudos to him. But, man, I'll tell you, nothing could be make me more happy than seeing him succeed. And, yeah, the production problems on the show are, like, I honestly, having watched now 8 episodes of this show, and let's just say each episode, I'm sure it costs more, but we've watched almost $100 million worth of Star Trek. $100 million. Have you got $100 million worth of Star Trek from this show? I think with the potential, I mean, maybe it was nice. It was nice to see Riker and Troy show up. But they could have done just an episode of Riker and Troy and Picard hanging out on their planet, and Riker could have baked pizza, and it would have been just as satisfying. This is what bothers me. These 8 episodes of Picard cost more than an entire season of the original series, more than 30 episodes of the original series. Now, I understand it's a very different time. It's 50 years later. It's half a century later. We've had half a century of television storytelling since the original series, 54 years to be exact. Are we getting 54 years of knowledge? Have we evolved storytelling and Star Trek storytelling and science fiction storytelling 54 years since the original series? Is Picard giving you that? I mean, Star Trek's been around for 54 years. Doctor Who's been around longer. So we've had 54 years of storytelling, which means people should be wise beyond their years when it comes to writing Star Trek. What makes a great Star Trek script? You've got 40 years. You got until 2005. So let's say 39 years of Star Trek. You've got 39 years of Star Trek. The original series, the animated series, Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. You can go pick 50 of your favorite Star Trek episodes out of all of those. In fact, you could listen to the Inglorious Treksperts podcast as we count down the 50 greatest episodes of Star Trek and watch those episodes and go, here's what a Star Trek episode's like. Here's what a Star Trek episode should have. That's what I want from Star Trek, and I'm not getting it. I feel like I'm watching people that have not learned the lessons that Star Trek's been teaching for 39 years. I mean, Sidhu's Screening Room tips $1 and says, I met Karen Kusama at a Sundance event and she was great. Can't wait for her Dracula. Any recommendations for Criterion that aren't Tarkovsky, Bergman, or Kurosawa? Watching Stalker right now. Interesting. And Devs on Hulu from Alex Garland is intriguing and will keep me going until Fargo. I really like the first two episodes of Devs a lot. Oh, there's so many good Criterion discs. One of my favorite, I'll tell you one that you probably haven't seen. I've talked about it on the show before. There is a Japanese movie directed by Juzo Itami. It's one of my favorite what would you call it? It's a hybrid. It's a comedy, it's a Western, and it's about noodles. And it's a Japanese film called Tampopo. And Tampopo means dandelion, which is the name of a noodle shop. I love this movie. I love Tampopo so much, and keeping with that Asian theme, Criterion did a fantastic job with their Wong Kar-wai disc In the Mood for Love. There's also Elio Petri, Investigation of a Citizen Beyond Suspicion. That is an incredible Criterion disc to get. Of course, anything by Koslowski, the Double Life of Veronique, the Three Colors trilogy, anything by Antonioni, La Notte, La Ventura, and of course The Eclipse. There is a disc that a movie I haven't seen that Pasolini directed. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know. It's a movie that just came out. Terramois. It's something like it's whatever they just released. I've never seen it. It's a new Pasolini movie that I really want to see. Belle de Jour, Buñuel's Belle de Jour is on Criterion. You should get that. Any of Kurosawa's films, you recommend. Oh, you already said Kurosawa. You don't want Kurosawa. Any of Truffaut's movie, The 400 Blows. Get that. You got to see that. That's essential. There's so many great. Oh, if you want to see a really interesting science fiction film directed by Fassbinder, World on a Wire, which is very Matrix-esque, very interesting. But those are just off the top of my head, so check that out. Sam O'Neill sent in a $3 super chat and says, just so you know, Agent Cody Banks and Emperor's New Groove are some of my favorite movies as a kid, and I couldn't tell you how many times I watched them. Well, for those of you who don't know, I was a producer of Agent Cody Banks and Agent Cody Banks Destination London, which I, by the way, apologize for Destination London. With Emperor's New Groove, I didn't work on the Emperor's New Groove. I worked on the DVD, and when I was at Curdy Pellerin, after I'd worked on Fantasia, I worked on The Emperor's New Groove, and I don't even know if you can get it. It's actually... oh, yeah, it's right there. Here, I'll get it. This, I have all my DVD work. It's above my head. This is the special edition DVD that I worked on, and we created, when I was at Curdy Pellerin, we created these. It's a really cool documentary where we went into the Disney animation department and we shot kind of in the spirit of the movie. We shot how an animated film is made, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know where this is at. I don't have this on Blu-ray. I don't know if the special features. I mean, this thing it's packed. It is packed. I was very proud of this particular disc. If you have it, it's got a lot of fun special features. I haven't looked at those special features. Those are almost 20 years old. I haven't looked at them in that time. But with Agent Cody Banks, I've talked about it on the show before, but I had a company called Endless Entertainment. And Endless Entertainment, I teamed up with Carrie David, who's become a great documentarian in her own right. Her film Breaking Their Silence, Women on the Front Lines of the Poaching War, has been winning all of these festival awards. It's an incredible documentary. She's shooting her latest documentary right now. That's really interesting. But so Carrie David, myself, and our partner named Danny Gold, we actually purchased the script for Agent Cody Banks. We bought it, and the script was okay. But then we had my friends Ashley Miller and Zach Stentz. Ashley and Zach had written not exclusively, but had written extensively for genre television. They wrote on Andromeda. They wrote on Fringe. So they wrote on, I think, the new Twilight Zone. And Zach recently wrote Rim of the World for McGee, and Ashley was on Black Sails. But Zach and Ashley, they hadn't written a film yet. They've later gone on. They wrote Thor, and they wrote X-Men First Class. But their first feature job, we had the Agent Cody Banks script, and it wasn't as good as we wanted. We brought Zach and Ashley in to rewrite the script. And their version of Agent Cody Banks, I have to say, was incredible. And what we wanted it to be was Ferris Bueller meets James Bond. That's what it was. And the gag is that he was already trained. He was already a badass and trained by the CIA. They just hadn't told him how to get close to girls yet. So that was kind of funny. But what we were going for was, I would say, the tone of it was Back to the Future. Not that it had time travel in it, but that kind of humor. So it wasn't necessarily directed at kids, but we sold it to MGM. MGM was going to make the film, and what they ended up doing was, once you sell a script to the studio, unless you're we'd never produced a feature film before, certainly not at the studio level. So they immediately, when they buy the script from you, I mean, as producers, you find the material, you cultivate it, which we did. They bought the material from us. They decided to make it for tweens. We had a movie that was written for 16 to 24-year-olds, so it'd be classic, right in that sweet spot. It had to be cool. They decided to make it for tweens, for 8 to 12-year-olds. And unfortunately, we had done our part. We'd sold them. We developed the property. It was kind of heartbreaking, but we got it made. We got the movie made, and Harold Zwart was hired, and he directed it. And I liked the movie, the first Cody Banks. I liked it, but there was the original Cody Banks script was incredible. It was incredible. And then to kidify it, they brought in two other writers, and they made it for more tween audiences, and they made it more kid-friendly, which to me is, here's the thing, making something kid-friendly is wrong. It's always wrong. If you had made Cody Banks the way it was originally written by Zach and Ashley, it would have made $250 million. It would have been a classic film. A lot of people love Cody Banks, and I love it, but people who love it usually saw it when they were on the younger side. But if Cody Banks was made for 16 to 24-year-olds, all the kids that loved Cody Banks now would have loved it even more. But anyway, we got it made, and it was for the most part a positive while it was happening. Well, it wasn't as positive as I would have liked it to have been, but hey, it got made, and it was a big triumph, and they made the sequel right away. So Homeboy got paid, which was great, and they made the movies. I wish the second film was just god-awful, so I apologize for that. But I'm glad you like Cody Banks. A lot of people like Cody Banks. People have been talking to me lately. What's really interesting about Cody Banks is people have been talking to me about Cody Banks now because they've grown up to the point where I'm now interacting with them. A lot of people like you saw it because it came out in 2003. So, people who saw it in 2003, they might have been 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10 when they saw it. So now they're in their 20s. And so when I meet people, they find out that I was a producer on that film. And what's really interesting, on that movie, I think there's like 13 producers, and they all share a card. Even Madonna. Fun fact, Rob here, your boy Rob, produced a movie with Madonna. How about that? And people will ask, how did that happen? Well, one of the companies that got the movie financed was Maverick, her company Maverick, and Guy Osseri, who ran Maverick, and she came on board as a producer. And Seinfeld's Jason Alexander was a producer too. So there's a wacky Hollywood story. How many YouTubers do you know that produced Agent Cody Banks or a movie at all with Madonna? How many people can say that? But anyway, if you look at that movie, the main credits are at the end. And everybody's sharing a title. All the producers share cards. And in Hollywood, what you want in the main titles of a movie is you want a single card. It's a prestige thing. You work up towards that. When you get that, well, of the producers of Agent Cody Banks, I have a single card. I'm a co-producer on the movie, but I have a single card. I'm the only producer of all the producers who has a single card credit in the main titles. And why? Because you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And I negotiated that. And what does that mean? Why is that important? That means that from then on, whenever I'm making another movie, I have what's called precedent. So if I come on a project as a producer, I get a single card credit. I do not share. So when I produced The Hills Run Red, another project that Dave Parker and I developed that project for years before it actually got made at Warner Brothers. When Dave Parker and I took the project to Warner Brothers and they bought off on it with Joel Silver, there was no question. So when the legal department's like, well, who are you to get a single card credit? I'm like, I have precedent because not only do I have a single card on Agent Cody Banks 1, I have a single card on Agent Cody Banks 2, which is, in fact, those are 2 studio movies. So immediately my precedent in terms of the way the business works is with Hills Run Red, which is a Warner Brothers movie, Warner Premiere and Dark Castle, I got a single card credited producer, and I was also in the first position. I know it's so silly, but it's part of as the producing credit gets diluted more and more as people give out producer credits willy-nilly, it's important. So when I came on board on Tango Shalom and became a producer, I also got a single card producer credit along with my fellow producer Joel Zwick, who directed my Big Fat Greek Wedding. So kids, there you go. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. Wow, this is a tangent, but I want to thank you for asking me that. And then Sam Neill followed up and said, so thank you, sir. Well, so thank you for asking me. It's always, whenever I get a chance to, sometimes I feel like, why am I talking so much? Like, why do I do these shows? But then it's people like you that remind me that, okay, I'm not just talking out of my ass. I mean, I do have a lot of industry experience. I might not have as much as a lot of other people, but I have some. So I have produced movies. I've edited movies. I'm currently editing and in the process of producing all the special features for The Hills Run Red, which has been really gratifying between Dave Parker and myself. If you have any interest in making movies, The Hills Run Red disc, just the special features, will provide a lot of insight and entertainment into how a movie's made. And it's been fun because I shot all this material because Hills Run Red was low budget, so I brought my own video camera out, my own equipment out, and I shot 12 years ago in Bulgaria, where we made the movie. I shot all of this behind-the-scenes footage, and a little bit of it was on the DVD, the original DVD. I'd made a 30-minute featurette, but now I've gone in and mined all of the remaining footage, all the interview footage I did, so you're really going to get a packed. If you like Hills Run Red or are waiting for that Blu-ray, there's a lot of material on it. Mark Chure, our own Mark Chure, a self-described toxic fan who really isn't a toxic fan. He's a man who always has something thoughtful and interesting to contribute, and he's been very supportive of this channel. So whenever Mark C is like E.F. Hutton. When Mark C speaks, I listen. Mark C sends in a super chat and says, Mark Bernardin, for me, is only another reason to watch the show. Absolutely. In too many public appearances, the man has said something racist toward Caucasians. You probably mean is another reason not to watch the show. In too many appearances, the man has said something racist toward Caucasians. I can't even watch Fat Man Beyond anymore. Okay. Now, here's the thing, man. I think that I think Mark Bernardin is, as a black man, he's sharing probably more of his experience. And the fact is, here's where I got you know I love you, but I have to not go with you there, because the fact of the matter is, how many times have I ever said on this show that the black experience in America is simply different than the white experience of America. And black Americans have never achieved total equality in this country. First of all, what? Black America represents 15% of the population or something, 14-15% around there. And you can't say, I don't think Mark Bernardin, and I've never once in my interactions with him have felt that he was discriminating or racist against me as a Caucasian. Never once. He's only been the sweetest, terrific guy, really smart guy. But as a black man in America, there's a reality he has to deal with. And that reality is, as I've said on this show, at 2 o'clock in the morning, if I'm coming back from a club or a bar or whatever, and I feel the need that I have to go into a 7-Eleven and buy a tube of toothpaste, if Mark Bernardin rolled up right behind me and he was going to buy a tube of toothpaste, we would be treated differently as we walked in the store. When I walk in to buy a tube of toothpaste, I don't have to worry. No one's going to look at me funny. When Mark Bernardin walks into a store at 2 o'clock in the morning, and if there's, say, a white person behind the counter, might not be treated the same. And I think that's just something, when I say everybody has a story to tell, you have yet to hear it. What I mean by that is that everybody's experience of the world, they might have a story. They might have a story, but hopefully through the stories they tell, their experience of the world, which is going to be different than yours, is conveyed. And by telling their story, hopefully it'll give you a little bit of insight into what they're experiencing. And I think if Mark Bernardin was a racist against Caucasians, would he go on a show with Kevin Smith? I think no, he wouldn't. And I would say that, look, I understand. I've heard Mark say some pretty incendiary things, but I know where he's coming from. I mean, I know him, and I don't think there's a racist bone in Mark Bernardin's body. I do think, however, he did live in this world. He's been an American his whole life, I think, and he knows how he's been treated as a black man in America. And I think that it's okay to convey those things. Those are the kind of stories, and it's important to listen to what he has to say. Because the fact is, until black Americans are treated exactly the same as any other kind of American, which they have never been, despite the fact that there was the civil rights movement, you have to understand, and you have to recognize. I mean, it's crazy. I have a good friend, Eliana Fu. She's Chinese. She's from London. She's from England. She has a British accent. And she's had to deal with, by the way, she's a PhD. She's a doctor in metallurgy. And she has to deal with horrible racists coming after her because of the coronavirus. I mean, yes, she's of Chinese descent, but she's a Brit. So it's crazy. Mark C., you also follow up and you say that Red Letter Media pointed out Star Trek Discovery has over 20 producers per episode. Okay, here's what's crazy. All of those producers are getting paid. And how much of a budget do those producers eat up? I mean, that's a lot. 20 producers is a lot of money. Even if they're only getting paid, and they get paid more than this. Let's say a producer gets paid, I don't know, $5,000 an episode. That's $125,000 right off the top of your budget just for producer fees. Like and look, these are episodes. When you're looking at an episode that probably costs $10 to $14 million to produce, they say $8 million. Yeah, with all these, this is a very top-heavy production. So, yes. Mukbang Reviews. Mukbang Reviews says, just supporting your work here and elsewhere. Well, thanks, Mukbang. Today's Prince song is Cream. Cream Shaboogie, yeah. She was good. I love Cream. What a great song. I still can't believe you haven't been to Paisley Park. Go. I haven't been to Paisley Park. I have not been to Paisley Park. However, Prince almost did run over me on the Warner Brothers lot during the post-production of, why am I drawing a blank on the movie? On Graffiti Bridge. He almost ran over me in his turquoise blue BMW. But I didn't get to see him. I saw his bodyguard, who wasn't chic. But, yes, and I was not hurt. He just didn't see me coming. So, Yes, that's true. And yeah, Stubble McShave sends in another tip. Amazing. Amazon's Carnival Row and Wheel of Time is filming in Prague. It seems like they both are temporarily shutting down production. Yes, there have been crew members that have been diagnosed with coronavirus. I would expect, that a lot of Hollywood is going to shut down. Now, what that's going to mean in the long run is there's going to be a lot of, where are we going to be in 6 months in terms of movies? I mean, I don't know. This coronavirus, the economic impact of this is wide-reaching. For Hollywood, it's devastating. In terms of box office, I mean, all of these tentpole movies are being taken off. One of the things people don't understand is that movies, people think that studios are sitting on a pile of money, and they can just take the money in their coffers. They do not. They do not have vast resources of liquid cash. What they do have are credit lines. They have credit lines with banks, so movies are made with borrowed money, essentially. So what happens is that money immediately starts accruing interest. Now, when you make movies, you have to pay everybody. There's payroll, and also the studios themselves, when they're making movies, part of their people are overseeing. There's executives at the studio level that are overseeing movies, and that's where studio accounting comes in. The studios are charging off. It's all so borrowing money to make movies. What happens is when the movies get released and they start making their box office, the studios start paying those loans back with interest. So when you have spent, and this is just the movies that are making, when you pull a movie like Fast 9 and delay it for a year, maybe they can borrow from Peter to pay Paul. I don't know. But the fact is that particular movie that needs to earn, they're expecting it. Okay, it takes this, say, 2 years. 2 years, they know when it's going to earn out. And they know based on previous earnings what they can expect to get from the Fast franchise. Fate of the Furious made over $1 billion, I believe it did. So by not being able to release Fast 9 for a year, they've postponed it 11 months. That's devastating in terms of money because you're accruing those interest payments. Now, imagine that's happening all the way across. It happened today with a number of different films. I would expect that we'll hear soon that Marvel they will pull Black Widow. I don't know when it's going to and if they pull Black Widow, do they push back the Eternals? Because again, you're dealing with, it's all about money. This coronavirus protecting, and I have to say again, kudos to, I mean, they'd have to do it, but kudos to them for taking action because they've done a great job. They're and we're going to see a lot more of it because they don't have a choice. You have an NBA player has coronavirus. The night before was playing. You don't know. I mean, come on, those dudes are sweating. They're breathing heavy. I mean, it's talk about an incubator. So it's going to be, we're in for the long haul. I don't know why people think that buying a bunch of toilet paper is the answer. But I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be rough. Mukbang Reviews wrote in and says, CNN says Disneyland is closed. I mean, the economic impact, if you think about it, if Disneyland's closed, there are thousands of people that just are out of a job. How do they pay their rent? How do they pay their bills? How do they buy food? If you're like, I live paycheck to paycheck, it's not like for YouTube, you get paid once a month for YouTube ad revenue or something, all that stuff. I get a one-time check for that. It's not huge, all of that is it's all going away. People's jobs are this, the economic impact of this is enormous. But the fact is, this is a very deadly and very communicable disease. This was something that was necessary to do, and kudos to all the companies that are willing to suck up. CinemaCon was canceled. All these gatherings. Think about Vegas. I mean, there's always going to be people that go drink and gamble. You can't expect, at least in a bar, there's alcohol everywhere. you get liquored up, you start breathing on somebody, at least there's some kind of antiseptic stuff happening. Perhaps that's why I want to start a show drinking wine with Elizabeth. But wow, Disneyland is closed, and Carnival Row and Wheel of Time filming in Prague. Yeah, and what's going to happen? That means that the studios are going to run out of programming. They're going to run out of programming, which, in a way, leaves an opportunity. We have yet to take Tango Shalom out to try and sell it, and I see this. Perhaps it could be there might be a silver lining to this cloud in the fact that we have a finished movie. You know, we haven't tried to sell it, but I think it could be helpful. Yeah. Oh, Mukbang says Disney will continue to pay cast members during this time. The statement said, you know what? If that's really true, good for Disney. You know, everybody talks about, I'm a huge fan of Disney. I have been since, you know, my whole life, and not just Disney movies and things like that. I've watched them. Disney went through a rough patch in the 80s, man. The early 80s, it was rough. I know everyone sees them as sort of the evil empire now, but in terms of staying on brand, they've done a pretty great job. And the fact that they're going to pay their cast members, I don't know for how long they can pay their cast members, but that's a pretty great thing to do. I mean, what was really interesting was I saw something that there was a representative, there were some congresswomen that asked if the current administration was suddenly going to make coronavirus test kits free. People are reporting that if you have medical insurance, I read this today in Washington State where there's major outbreaks, they talked about the fact that a coronavirus, if you have insurance, is between $300 to $500, but if you don't have insurance, it's $1,600. And then in Congress, two congresswomen asked one of our health officials, part of the Trump administration, will you make coronavirus testing kits, will you make them free, as we asked you to do a week ago? I think this is on the floor of Congress. I watched the video right before the show, and he could not answer that question. So, interesting. But Claude Hibbert says, if you put lime in the Corona, it kills the virus. Yeah, because there's not enough liquor in Corona, right? That's interesting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been sort of a rambling show, I have to say. I don't know if I've done such a good job of conveying my ideas about Star Trek Picard this week. I can say that Space Legolas, I think we should all pray for him. And I really hope that one day they let him out of his corridor of death. And perhaps now that Seven of Nine's the new Borg Queen and has taken this Borg cube off to greener pastures, maybe something will happen. Maybe they'll rock. I mean, I want to see that Borg cube. I want to see that Borg cube become, I want to see it lead a Federation task force into this planet and wreck shop. Seven of Nine, cooking. That's what I want to see. I want to see a Borg cube join the Federation, because I think the Romulans were not, clearly the Romulans, they weren't thinking big enough. Anyway, somebody, by the way, please tell me how many people Space Legolas has fought to the death, and how many people died. How many people died in tonight's episode? What is the kill count of Picard if you include, I don't know if they actually set a number, an actual number of XBs and Borg that were in stasis, because I guess they all fucking died. So maybe the death count, the Picard death count is higher. And by the way, people are like, well, in past Star Trek episodes, lots of people died. People died in every episode. Like in the Apple, 8 red shirts died. I understand. I get it. But here's the thing. In Star Trek, they never played death for any kind of visceral thrill. Anybody who died, it was always a loss. Nobody just got willy-nilly, just straight up guns to the head, suicides. I went mad, so let me bash my brains in with a rock myself, which we saw today. Today. That's the difference. The difference is when somebody died in Star Trek, or you even, like when the Starship Intrepid died in the immunity syndrome, or the Gamma 7A system, or however many billions of inhabitants died, it was always horrifying. And when a giant 11,000 mile long space amoeba invades your galaxy and starts straight up killing people, that's one thing. Yes, there has always been death in Star Trek, but that was horrifying. And the idea of this invading virus into our own. I mean, by the way, if you want to watch a topical episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, the immunity syndrome is one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek. It's an unsung episode. It is a great episode of Star Trek with a great science fiction concept, great camaraderie, great McCoy-Spock interaction. Second season of the original series, The Immunity Syndrome. It's the most topical episode of the original series you can watch now, and I think it's great. Paul Gilmore says, with movies being pulled and if theaters shut down along with work and school, streaming services will be rolling in the dough. Well, that would be true, but remember, they're not making money from advertisers yet. Well, some don't, but it's all through subscription services. But maybe a lot of them people will sign up again. I mean, like I said, one of the first things I watched with Elizabeth when we signed up for Disney Plus was That Darn Cat. And I wouldn't have seen that had I not had Disney Plus. So I think you're right. I think streaming services are going to be great. Part of the reason I want to do remember, as the chancellor of cheerfulness, I thought it would be kind of fun to do a show with Elizabeth because she's going to Art Center School of Design here in Pasadena, one of the nation's most prestigious art colleges. She doesn't have classes anymore. And she does people's hair. She has her own salon in our house, and how many clients is she going to get? So part of what we wanted to do by doing this show is to create more content, more entertainment value, and I think people have been asking me to do more stuff, and I think just talking about a movie, like one movie straight up, and celebrate films. Maybe we'll do two, but I think we can only commit to one. I think it'd be a fun show. We'll celebrate with a bottle of wine, and then we'll talk to you guys live like we do now, and we'll use. I mean, the movie, of course, will be a jumping off point to a freewheeling discussion. So that will start tomorrow night, 8:00 Pacific time. I don't have a name for it yet, but watch out for it. But Paul, streaming hopefully will be rolling in the dough. I think it's good. I mean, never has home entertainment been more important, I don't think. And here it's going to be raining for the next 5 days as well, which is great because that means I don't have to water the plants, because I also do gardening in addition to everything else I do around this house. But anyway, I want to thank all of you for watching today's show. This brings an end to episode number 359 of Robservations. And I want to thank you. I'm a little disappointed in my analysis of Picard. I was a little scatterbrained. And maybe it's just because I'm just worried about Space Legolas, and I don't know what's going to happen to the poor man. Now that he's got Borg Queen 7 of 9, or at least 7 of 9 absconding with a Borg cube and him inside, maybe one day he will be reunited with his people, so Space Galadriel does not have to question Picard about what did you do with our favorite son, because I'm really worried that Space Galadriel is going to... She already gave it to him once. He already abandoned those people 14 years ago. He shows up for no reason at all. I still don't know why. Why did Picard go take Space Legolas? Certainly not. And left him on the Borg cube. Just straight up left him there to fight in the corridors for days at a time. What? Not cool. But anyway... I just want to thank you all for being here. I will be back. I'll be more cheerful tomorrow, I promise, talking about something other than Star Trek Picard. But thank you very much for being here. This is the end of Robservations, episode 359. I want to thank my moderating staff, of course, beginning with the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden, of course, Detective Jim Boyers. There's, of course, Greg Smith, who is still building his 1-to-1 scale snowspeeder from The Empire Strikes Back, but doesn't have to have it ready for the Emerald City Comic Con because it's going to be postponed. Or it is postponed, not going to be. And then, of course, there's Louis Yu and Jordy Lyons. My moderating staff keeps everybody happy here, and I'm glad they're here, and I thank my lucky stars every day that we have them. And if I was on a Borg cube and I had to fight off scores of Romulans with my sword, even though they had beam weapons that they apparently never try and stun me with, I would want all of my moderators to back me up. But anyway, I bring this show to an end. I want to thank you guys for supporting the channel. Please send me letters to the Burnettwork.net website. I will read your letters on the air. And I'm certainly going to have a lot of time. There's more time for everybody. So you guys write letters. Tell me what you want to see. Tell me what you want to do. Send me videos. Send me, I guess, viewer videos. You can send me videos, and I, as you all know, I play them on the air. By the way, if you use your iPhone, turn it horizontally. But I play them on the air, and love to hear from all of you. Send me letters, and let's build the community. Please subscribe. Please like if you like these chats. If you think I'm a monumental douche, please tell me in the comments section, because I don't just need to hear good things. There's half of Twitter that follows me wants to string me up, or they call me a gatekeeper. I don't know. I just think that the spice must flow. I'm part of the Spacing Guild, wouldn't you know it? Anyway, thank you all for being here. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am bringing an end to Robservations, episode 359. Thank you so very much for being here. And as always, have a better day.